Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day you may be watching this at. Welcome to episode 3 of the Crash Course series. Today I'm going to be talking about endometriosis. Okay, what is endo, what causes endo, signs, symptoms, issues, barriers, and going through a holistic approach towards treatment as well, or just maintaining high quality of life while living with endo. I guess it's always worth mentioning as well, I am not a medical professional. Anything that I'm saying is coming from with an holistic approach. It's not medical advice. It's not something that I suggest or recommend. I'm just trying to spread as much factual information and awareness as I possibly can on the matter. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so what is endometriosis? Endometriosis is a chronic inflammatory condition, basically where the inner lining of the endometrium starts to grow in surrounding areas of the body or throughout the body. Okay, so when I say the inner lining of the endometrium, I'm basically saying it's the inside tissue of the uterus. Now, typically, with endo, that starts to grow outside of that uterus or endometrium, but in surrounding areas. So just around the general pelvic cavity, in surrounding organs. However, through different, let's just say methods that I will go through, it can spread in anywhere within the body, really, in a nutshell. However, going past that pelvic cavity sort of area is on the rarer side. Even though endometriosis does affect 1 in 10 women, it's typically around that uterus area where it starts to grow outside of itself. You typically, anyway, don't see it going to the upper half of the torso. Okay, it's alongside PCOS is definitely one of the most easily misdiagnosed conditions, if diagnosed at all, leading women to live quite with a poor quality of life, I would say, mainly because of something that's not been diagnosed or has been told it's something else, and having to go down a route where treatment isn't actually specific to the condition that they're living with, or what they're told to do or how they're told to treat it is more of like a plaster on a gunshot wound. It's something where you're kind of just sweeping the issue underneath the carpet rather than actually addressing the underlying issue and correcting itself and fixing itself. So what causes endo? There are several different factors believed to have caused endo, but there's nothing specific that's been identified. Right, that's the main root of the problem. Mainly due to the fact that because we don't know what causes endo, there's yet to be a cure put together. Although there are definitely lifestyle modifications and dietary changes, and again, a holistic approach that you can adopt is going to see an improvement with signs, symptoms, and improved quality of life while living with endometriosis. And there's no root cure, unfortunately, this time. Because there's nothing specific that's been identified as the root cause of the problem. There are still several factors believed to cause endo. The first one being retrograde menstruation, which in a nutshell is where the inner lining of the uterus starts to flow backwards through the fallopian tubes during menstruation. So as I was saying, what endometriosis is where that inner lining of the uterus starts to grow outside of itself, the pelvic cavity and other surrounding organs and areas. So retrograde menstruation is where that inner lining starts to flow backwards through the fallopian tubes during menstruation and then attaches itself to other areas and then starts to grow. That's what causes endometriosis. There's also a hereditary predisposition. So in a nutshell, if your mum's got endo, chances are you're going to get it. If it runs in the family, you've obviously got a higher likelihood of getting endo, or having endo, should I say. And then there's an element of lymphatic and circulatory spread, which is a bit more uncommon, and that's where that inner lining spreads throughout the circulatory system. And again, this is how endo can spread to other areas outside of the pelvic cavity because of that circulatory spread, which obviously goes throughout the body. That's a little bit more uncommon. That is definitely more on the rare side of things, but again, it is still an element. So signs and symptoms. The typical signs and symptoms with endometriosis are heavy bloating in very, very painful periods, pain during sex, blood clots, and irregular menstruation. And again, all these signs and symptoms can point in other directions as well, and it's definitely beneficial to not just get blood work done, but also get an ultrasound as well at the same time, just to see exactly what's going on in those areas. I would say issues and struggles that most women face when living with endo, and again, this is the risk of sounding like I'm mansplaining things as a man who's obviously never going to get endometriosis. It's I would say that the biggest issue, the biggest barrier that most women face when living with endo is just poor quality of life. There's no one size fits all when it comes to endo. It's not just going to affect every single female in the same way. I've worked with plenty of women that can maintain a very high quality of life and get everything they want to get done when they're having a bad flare-up or during their period. However, there are plenty of other women that I've worked with that can't get out of bed, they can't go to the gym, and the thought of doing anything that actually puts any extra strain on their body is makes their skin crawl. It's there's no one size fits all, and I definitely think the mental health side of things is usually what takes the biggest hit. Obviously, there's the physical element of being in an incredible amount of pain, struggling to get just daily tasks done, struggling to get anything extra done like your training, exercise, any recreational sports. If you work maybe a little bit more of a manual job, it can definitely make life in general significantly more difficult, and I think that can definitely have a knock-on effect with the mental health side of things. The most common form of treatment that I see women getting put on to, I don't want to say cure or fix because it doesn't do either of those, but it's to mask the problem, I guess, is birth control. And again, this is something where we're playing with hormones, which can then have another knock-on effect regarding mental health, especially if there is especially if there's an element of physiological changes with the birth control. Again, it's not one size fits all when it comes to birth control and how it will affect the woman physically, emotionally, mentally. But if it creates things like bloating, water retention, acne, whether that's being put on it or coming off of it, that's obviously another element of affecting how the woman feels mentally and emotionally, on top of how that endometriosis is affecting her quality of life as well at the same time. So when we talk about treatment for endometriosis, as I said, there's no cure. There's no real, let's say, fix as such. But there are definitely things that you can do with your diet, with your lifestyle, in order to make quality of life a little bit higher and to make signs, symptoms, and let's just say overall pain that you experience less apparent, less aggressive. I would say the number one thing that you should be looking at is, if you don't understand blood work analysis yourself, working with someone that does, and also understanding gut health in order to properly assess exactly how to take next steps and how to make improvements. Endometriosis and gut health are heavily correlated, mainly due to the fact that they're all in the surrounding areas. These two systems do intertwine in some sense, but if you're someone who's dealing with bloating, indigestion, poor gut health, speaking in a more general sense there, that's going to make all the pain symptoms you experience during living with endometriosis a lot more apparent. So having having healthy gut health will definitely make any kind of pain experience during while having endometriosis just more manageable. Quality of life will definitely see an improvement there. I would say from an holistic perspective as well, you want to be able to manage estrogen, whether that's the metabolism of it or the detoxification of it. Endometriosis is an estrogen-driven condition, meaning that if you're quite high with estrogen, your endometriosis symptoms are typically going to be a little bit higher as well at the same time. So basically this is why blood work analysis is pretty important as well, because it's just identifying exactly where is that estrogen lying, and what can we do to manage that. A big one as well is avoiding endocrine disruptors. So obviously endometriosis being an estrogen dependent condition and driven condition, it's obviously affecting the endocrine system in a sense. So having any kind of disruptors at play that will affect that system, you kind of want to remove them as much as you possibly can. Now, I think there's definitely this has become a hot topic within social media over the past, couple of years, I would say, which isn't a bad thing, but it's not always a big a factor as most people play it out for the general population or anyone that doesn't have any kind of hormonal imbalances or conditions. However, someone with endometriosis does want to avoid endocrine disruptors as much as possible, just so you're not disrupting that endocrine system as much as possible. So eating out of cans with tinned lining, avoid heating and eating out of plastic as much as you possibly can. So if you're on your meal prep game and you're eating out of Tupperware, try and opt for more glass containers. certain fragrances, perfumes, deodorants. Just trying to, like, if you simply just Google endocrine disruptors, it will give you a long list of things that you should and shouldn't be avoiding. Now, I don't think any of them are typically unreasonable. There's nothing that you're going to look in that list and think, I can't go about my day-to-day life without those things. There are plenty of substitutes, whether that's more natural fragrances, perfumes, things like that, and you can get natural deodorants, you can get glass containers for your Tupperware, you can opt for eating out of, rather than tinned and canned goods, going for more like fresh or fresh frozen sources. So the reason why you want to avoid these kind of things is because any kind of endocrine disruptors can alter, mimic, or even block the hormones that are at play. Now, you're already living with a condition where hormones are a little bit out of whack. The last thing you want to be doing is basically on a day-to-day basis putting things into your body that are going to make that worse. Going into the lifestyle modifications, okay, so there's no sexy answer for this, and I definitely think that it's, when I go through it, you're probably going to listen to it and think, fuck that, or thinking, oh, that sounds too difficult, or it's just, I think it's generally basic knowledge, and it's probably things that even people, whether they're men or women, without endometriosis, are going to benefit from. So the first one being reducing gluten. In a nutshell, gluten is a little bit harder to digest. Going back to what I was speaking about, healthy gut, you basically want to do whatever you can in order to maintain efficient and effective digestion. An overwhelming amount of gluten can definitely slow things down and put a little bit more strain on that system. And if your digestive system is under strain, guarantee is going to make your pain symptoms a little bit more significant as well at the same time. Okay, you want to be removing or reducing cow's dairy, simply due to the fact that, you know, especially within the UK in some sense, there's plenty of hormones pumped into cow's dairy. Not just the cow's dairy itself, but the cows are obviously producing that dairy. So again, it's going back to what I was speaking about regarding the endocrine disruptors. We want to remove that and remove anything that's going to cause those already out of whack hormones to get any worse. Same applies with cow's dairy there. Diet, you want to be reducing or removing inflammatory foods. So there's a significant amount of inflammation already happening on the endocrine system there, specifically around the uterus, okay? So inflammatory foods, we're talking like processed, ultra-processed foods, foods that are already pumped full with chemicals and preservatives, foods that are already pretty much digested for you in a sense of ultra-processed. Your digestive system isn't having to really do any work there. So again, it's not just about avoiding certain chemicals and shite, to put it very bluntly, that's put into the food. It's about keeping that digestive system and that gut health healthy and efficient by making it do its job. There's a big difference in why a lot of people talk about whole foods. It's not just micronutrition, it's about gut health in a sense of you need to make your digestive system work. You need to keep it efficient, and avoiding ultra-processed foods and more opting for whole foods is basically the best way of doing that. And the one that most people aren't going to enjoy hearing, removing or drastically reducing alcohol. Okay, again, when we put alcohol into our system, one, it is a depressant. So just going back to what I was touching on regarding mental health side of things, quality of life can take a hit when you're living with endometriosis. The last thing that you want to be doing is putting a depressant into your body that's going to make that worse. Second thing being, alcohol will add into inflammation. Third thing being, when you put alcohol into your system, typically that gets prioritized over anything else to be processed, let's say. So that's going to put a little bit more strain on that digestive system too. And again, at the same time, it's just quality of life does take a little bit of a hit. Now, I think supplementation is definitely key, but it's not going to be a saving grace. You can throw supplementation into the equation here and you will see an improvement. But if you're not making the dietary changes and the lifestyle modifications, it's very much a cherry on top that can work alongside those things, but it's not going to mask a poor lifestyle and poor dietary choices as well at the same time. So something like NAC and a high quality cod liver oil. When I say NAC, I'm talking about N-acetylcysteine, and then cod liver oil, a very high quality omega-3. These are both going to help reduce inflammation or make it a hell of a lot more manageable. Things like pea, ginger, and I'm going to say magnesium, okay, but this is something that I would recommend that every person be taking, whether you're male or female, especially female, and whether you have endometriosis or not. But in a nutshell, again, it's going to reduce that inflammation. And 100% if you include things like pea, ginger, magnesium, NAC, and a high quality cod liver oil. There are other things that you can throw in the mix there, but these are 5 that I would say that you can include that you're probably going to get more bang for buck, and they're a little bit more holistic rather than you having to spend top dollar on some wanky supplement site just to get these in the equation. You will definitely see an improvement with inflammation. You'll definitely see an improvement with pain management. And you'll definitely see an improvement with general signs and symptoms as well at the same time. As I said before, I'm not a medical professional and I'm not going to be giving out medical advice. What I tend to see happen when it comes to a woman going to her GP with endo and wanting to manage her endo pain is immediately being put on the pill. And I'm not here to agree or disagree with that, but I definitely think that women should be working on lifestyle modifications, dietary changes, and a overall holistic approach if she's going to be doing that as well. And there are obviously other factors to consider when going on hormonal birth control, and that's not going to fix the problem. It's very much, as I said, a plaster on a gunshot wound, sweeping the actual underlying issues underneath the carpet and pretending like they're not there. They might help pain management. Again, another thing I'll see is women taking just general ibuprofen or a heavy duty painkiller. It'll make pain management a little bit better, I guess, in a sense, but again, once you come off that birth control, which at some point you should, the issues are just going to arise again. So it's important to try and assess and identify any kind of underlying bacterial issues. If you have poor gut health, if you generally just eat shit, then that's the first thing that you should be addressing. Okay, there's the very general obvious advice as well of like 7 to 9 hours of sleep every single night, plenty of hydration, lots of fruit and fibre in general, and a high protein diet and a high unsaturated fat diet as well. So when I talk about unsaturated fats, I'm talking about things like 70% or higher dark chocolate, avocado, natural nut butters, nuts, seeds, extra virgin olive oil. Fatty fish is a great one. You'll get your omega-3s from that as well at the same time. So yeah, if you are going to go onto the pill, purely just to help manage your endometriosis, again, I'm not here to agree or disagree with that. One bit of advice I would give you is make sure that you're actually working alongside or working on the dietary changes and lifestyle modifications as well as that, okay? But as I was saying, it's very important to assess the underlying gut or any kind of bacterial issues that you may or may not be living with or facing as well at the same time, because the two systems are definitely heavily correlated and intertwined. So seeing an improvement in one will definitely see an improvement with the other. Now, this is something where you might have to invest in working with someone in order to work on that. Okay, that's not me saying, oh, hire me or pay me money or anything like that. It's just me saying, right, if there is an issue there with your gut health, with bacterial issues, and it's something that you want to improve on, like do your research, but also it's not even necessarily hiring a coach. Just pay for consultations. You'll definitely see an improvement on that side of things just from getting that knowledge and being able to assess your blood work and be like, right, this is an approach you can take here. But yeah, that's a quick crash course on endo for you. Hopefully you've learned something. You've either learned, right, what lifestyle changes can I make, what dietary changes can I make, what supplements can I maybe add in to make my quality of life, my pain, my symptoms, signs, etc. a little bit more manageable. I've been getting messages or having chats with plenty of other coaches as well. I know there's a few coaches that have been watching these videos, so hopefully you've learned something as well, and it's something you can implement with your female clients too. Again, I'm not a medical professional. I'm talking purely from an holistic approach, and I'm only doing this to spread as much factual information and awareness and just general advice and help as much as I possibly can. I'm not giving you medical advice in any way, shape or form. I'm not telling you to go and do something. But yeah, hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.